Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the second match of the day for the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC, sponsored by Elgato. My name is Maeve O'Rourke, and it's been a few weeks, Lou, but we are back together, and I am very excited to be looking at our next match today.
Yeah, finally, Dream Team back in action. What do you say? It's already been a brilliant match so far on this Sunday broadcast, and the action is just going to get better and better, particularly when you take a look at the matchup we've got ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely. The match that we have ahead of us actually is really interesting. It is China and the Netherlands. Sorry, you guys just did China and the Netherlands. My bad. It is Brazil and South Korea. We did get to look at a Brazil and South Korea match
Mm.
yesterday, which was obviously very interesting. We've been able to see a lot of different teams here. South Korea has already pretty handedly taken their spot in the top eight to move forward. So we do have the match between Victor Vieira and Wonseok Jung today. So interested to see. I'm sure you guys got a little bit of a sneak preview at those teams during the break before we came right on. So I know Lou has a couple of Pokemon she's really excited to see here, and I have a couple I'm excited to see as well.
I mean, Regieleki, can we get some hype for Regieleki? Always amazing to see. And you can see it's actually been quite a pivotal Pokemon throughout this matchup between Brazil and South Korea as well. You can see it dotted about there a few times, happy, bouncy, and yellow. But also, again, you have to take a look at those restricted. It's always something I'm interested to see, particularly in a restricted format where you're only allowed one. It's not something we've really ever had before. A lot of Zacian, but also when you take a look at Brazil's side, I can see two Xerneas in there as well.
True Xerneas, but also a complete straight line of Landorus Incarnate is the first thing that's drawing my eye as well. So interesting to see from Brazil's side. South Korea's brought a little bit of some unorthodox Pokemon, though. Looking at that Calyrex Shadow Rider paired with a Ditto and a Jellicent is a team that really interests me. I love that you guys got to look at Ditto last game. Ditto acts almost like that second restricted. Not as much HP typically, but I mean, unless you're changing into a Regieleki, you're not going to have as much of an HP stat, as standard. So interesting to see as well, just the utility that you can have, but you have to be mindful of your own positioning just left and
Mm.
right, almost like those ally switch mind games that we've seen for years and years and years. But I'm still loving these teams. I'm excited to see what South Korea brings because they already locked in, but we don't know exactly, these matches could have been played before they were fully confident in that lock-in. So, taking a look at Victor's team, he's going to be running that Zacian. This is the only Brazilian team without that Landorus Incarnate, though, with Zacian, Incineroar, Regieleki, Rillaboom, Volcarona, and Dragapult.
Yeah, breaking the mold for Brazil here. None of that Landorus, but Zacian is going to be the Pokemon choice, not the Xerneas. And of course, Regieleki, love to see that Pokemon here on the fray. And I think the interesting thing to note here is we don't see a water type Pokemon. And, very common is that fire, water, grass core. We've got the fire, we've got the grass, but no water variant on this team. Instead, opting for kind of double fire mode with that Volcarona as well. And that can be a really great Pokemon to have, sort of the Rage Powder, bringing attacks in. And it can get up to all kinds of shenanigans. I wonder if it is going to be the choice in this matchup though.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Dragapult as well. The only reason I'm looking at it, almost assuming it's a water type, is because we saw so many Dragapult running Surf with a Colossal
Mm.
partner. So not a real water type, kind of a fake water type mostly, but still a really nice Pokemon to have. Haven't seen it all that much. But his opponent, though, Wonseok Jung, is bringing a very big water type in the name of Kyogre with Incineroar, Urshifu, Zapdos, Mimikyu, and Ferrothorn. So Ferrothorn's an interesting pick here for a grass type. We haven't seen it all that much. We've seen a lot of different Pokemon that run that body press kind of
Mm.
set that we've seen just over the past few months. I know Jamie Boyd ran Appleton with a similar set, and then we've seen, some other Pokemon that kind of run that same, boosting up your defense stat and then going for those body presses. So interesting to see if that's the type that he's going for, or if he's going for that more traditional Leech Seed leftovers kind of stall out Ferrothorn.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was the Iron Defense and Body Press combination. It really was kind of, I guess, first piloted by the Ferrothorn. That's when it's first started to kind of really emerge out into VGC. And then, like you said, some other Pokemon have tried to cotton onto it. But I think really is the one that capitalizes on it the best. Some other great Pokemon on here you got to talk about is that Zapdos. If it's going to be anything like the first match we showcased on today's broadcast, then we're going to be in for an absolute treat with that Zapdos. Again, Mimikyu, a Pokemon that I really like to see. It can often get up to loads of tricks, can be a really great support Pokemon, and obviously can utilize Trick Room, something that the Ferrothorn would be beneficial to be in, and just nice for kind of prepping for matchups, because if you're up against a Trick Room team, having a Pokemon like a Mimikyu means you can obviously switch things around back into your favor.
Yeah, and showing this Mimikyu on the team is really kind of telling me right now that this Kyogre is that the leftovers Calm Mind variant in my head anyway. By looking at this team, there is no Tornadus on there, there is no Serena. So having this Mimikyu kind of shows that this is going to be that really bulky, hard to break through Kyogre, who once they set up those Calm Minds and get that consistent leftovers boost, can be really tough to deal with. The only thing I'm not seeing is that Rillaboom on the team, which it does benefit from having that grassy terrain. So interesting to see if this Ferrothorn is able to get any of those really nice moves, any of those big tricks up here, though. But I guess we'll have to see exactly in team preview exactly what item that Kyogre is holding. I am making a guess just on team preview, but sometimes that is what it is with these items that Kyogre can. We saw with Choice Specs and Choice Scarf for a long time. So that new mode has been really interesting for me to see, kind of coming late in the meta.
Yeah, that's the thing. The item choice is always really interesting to me, and we're quite lucky that we get this kind of front row seat to one side of the field here with the Incineroar and Volcarona combination we've got going on here. Choice banned on that Dragapult, so I wouldn't expect it to be going for any surfs here. I know that you said it might be that pseudo water type, but not today. It's definitely going to stick on its physical side of things. Again, some options here that really aren't surprising. The Focus Sash, the Assault Vest, again, safety goggles. We see these very often, and a berry on the Incineroar. But it's going to be interesting to see how these Pokemon match up. I think Regieleki, obviously, Regieleki and Rillaboom can apply a lot of pressure to that opposing Kyogre, and you do have to make sure that you have utility in your team to be able to counter your opponent's restricted. So just trying to remove it from the field, particularly as it is the water type, you've got 2 fire types on your team, you want to make sure it's not going to be able to utilize those water type moves and start picking up KOs against you.
Yeah, and another thing too, like you said with that item choice, that choice band is also showing me it's not going to be running any screens on this Dragapult. It's going to be a far more offensive variant. It's going to be one of those Pokemon that, the other Dragapult's one of those Pokemon that was so popular before the restricted format, before a lot of really good fairy types were introduced with the Xerneas and with the Zacian, even with that Play Rough especially. So having Dragapult in the format is a little bit of an interesting choice now, but back in January, February of 2020, when we first started looking at it, it was on every single team. So interested to see exactly what moves it's going to run, especially if it is going to be choice locking itself into something to boost that attack stat. These leads, though, I think are going to be important. If that does come, if it doesn't, it's just one of those Pokemon that you have to be mindful of if you see it in a team builder. There's so many ways that it can be run, though. But the leads will be interesting from both of these players. We are going to have first the Incineroar and the Zapdos. So like you said, that Zapdos being a big part, but then the Regieleki and the Rillaboom.
Yeah, Regieleki so happy to be here, and you could see as well from Victor's side of that team preview, he really made a quick decision to not bring that Dragapult to this particular match, really counting down the seconds here. Intimidate going to be thrown out from that opposing Incineroar, of course not going to be worrying Regieleki's point of view, it's just still super happy to be here, but it will of course affect that Rillaboom. The one thing Rillaboom still has though is of course that Fake Out, as does the Incineroar, so wondering where these are going to come down to. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Regieleki potentially go for something like a Protect. We know it is carrying the Focus Sash, and if you're Wonseok, you can probably predict that as well, so just trying to get the break on it, meaning that you can leave it vulnerable and pick up a KO a little bit later on, could very well be optimal. But then Rillaboom has the potential then to go for some really good damage in this grassy terrain.
Yeah, and Rillaboom with that faster Fake Out as well is going to be able to Fake Out this Incineroar if it goes for the Fake Out, which it does. So Incineroar not going to be able to get a Fake Out or able to manage breaking that Focus Sash. Instead, the Regieleki will be going for an Electro Web. So that's going to slow down the speed of both of the Pokemon on Wonseok's side with that Zapdos and that Incineroar. Neither of them really worrying too much about that damage, but a Heat Wave from the Zapdos here doing some great damage to both of these Pokemon. Does not seem to get any burns though, most importantly. So Regieleki's Sash is broken, but nobody's burned here.
Yeah, the faster Fake Out really coming in clutch there for that Rillaboom, just going to be able to protect the Regieleki and allowing it to go for the Electro Web. And that's the thing, once you start getting into the speed tiers, this is where you can really start to steamroll through your opponent. Regieleki, wouldn't be surprised to see it again, try and go for a Protect here, just try and burn out a turn of the opposing side. Rillaboom could as well have the utility here to go for something like a U-turn, just pivot in on out. Knowing that you've got the speed advantage with the speed lowered on the opposing side, it could give you the opportunity to bring in potentially your restricted from the back and just apply some pressure going forward. But then you have to watch out for that Incineroar. It's free to go for something like a Flare Blitz, whether it stays as the Rillaboom or switches into something like the Zacian. Neither of those Pokemon are going to appreciate taking a fire type move at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Regieleki will protect, though, not appreciating taking any moves at all, fire type or not here. Rillaboom goes for the U-turn, just positioning, just pivoting like we see Rillaboom do in pretty much every single game it ever goes to. So now Victor's going to Victor's going to be able to bring in a Pokemon that might better handle two fire type attacks, one from this Zapdos and one from this Incineroar on the opposing side. This Incineroar as well is going to be able to offer some nice fake out pressure for Victor on the end for him as well. So now, maybe next turn doesn't have to worry about a Heat Wave or possible burn from that Zapdos like we see this turn. So Zapdos' Heat Wave will do a little bit of damage to this Incineroar. Regieleki wisely protecting here, even though it would not get knocked out to that Heat Wave, not wanting to risk a burn, but a parting shot here actually goes into the protected Regieleki slot, so that Incineroar on Wonseok side is actually stuck on this field for the next turn.
Yeah, and this is the thing here for Victor. You've got access to that fake out, but it's who do you put it down into? You can utilize it to be able to allow that Regieleki to go for something like a Volt Switch and just get off the field, maybe try and bring in your Restricted, but then we know both these Pokemon are packing Fire-type moves, well, most likely the opposing Incineroar anyway, so you don't want to risk your Zacian coming in and taking damage here, so you could potentially use the opportunity for Regieleki to deal out some good damage. Not only is it speedy, but it is known to be also pretty powerful at times, so if it wants to go for something like a Thunderbolt, maybe even try and catch a switch in on Wonseok side, then it certainly can do, and then, even if it does get KO'd, it will allow Victor that switch in a little bit later on. Alternatively, Incineroar could just go straight away on the offensive here. Why waste time with the fake out if you can get some good damage off with something like a Flare Blitz here going down into something like the Zapdos?
Yeah, absolutely. Regieleki, though, Thunderbolt, so no Volt Switch, staying on the field, does a little bit of good damage here, even though it's not very effective. Incineroar goes for that Flare Blitz onto the Zapdos as well. This is not enough to knock it out, though, and that is a ton of recoil and no burn, so this Zapdos hanging on is really frustrating as it gets its own Thunderbolt off into the Incineroar, gets it down to under half of its HP, but that does mean this Incineroar, who's carrying the Citrus Berry, will be able to gain some health back, put it back to kind of near where it was, and then the parting shot finally goes off onto this Regieleki to allow Wonseok to position, so a really nice live for Wonseok with that Zapdos.
Yeah, I really like the thinking here from Victor, capitalizing on the fact that you're faster than both the opposing Pokemon, trying to double up, pick up a KO against that Zapdos is pretty, you could just think that the Incineroar is going to try and go for that parting shot again, right? So you're not going to have to take any damage necessarily, but you might be able to pick up a cheapy KO. But just unfortunately, Zapdos able to survive here, and Incineroar able to get out and switch in place for this Mimikyu. I wonder what it's going to get up to.
Yeah, the Mimikyu could go for something like that Trick Room, but you do have the Electro Web to maybe quickly take out this Zapdos, and if you have that Incineroar in the back to maybe switch in just for that third Pokemon that we know of, but if that Kyogre is that last slot, that Kyogre is not really going to be wanting to switch in here onto any sort of electric-type spread move that this Regieleki could throw out, even if it did just take that parting shot for its troubles, and Incineroar, not really going to want to deal with a Kyogre here either, so there is a chance for the Zapdos to switch out and switch back in, which it does, so the Zapdos will be able to kind of come in and maybe take a hit later for a free switch in. Brings in the Incineroar, once again fake out pressure onto the field. Intimidate, that isn't really doing a whole lot to this other Incineroar. It is nice to have just for that chip damage over time though. Regieleki actually goes for a Volt Switch here, will break the disguise for this Mimikyu and take a little bit of chip damage, but if this Mimikyu goes for something like a Trick Room and there isn't a taunt on the Incineroar on Victor's side, might be a little bit tough moving forward here, Lou.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was expecting kind of an Electro Web coming out here, maybe to try and pick up the KO against Zapdos and just break that disguise on the Mimikyu. But like you said, if there isn't really a way to stop Trick Room, which I don't believe there is necessarily for Victor, I didn't actually catch the move pool to see if there was something like a cheeky taunt. And even if there is, Mimikyu is so often running that mental herb anyway, just to kind of negate it straight away. You want to get rid of your really super duper speedy Pokemon from the battlefield if you think Trick Room is potentially going to go up. So I think it was nice to go for the Volt Switch. You're still breaking the disguise and bringing that Zacian into play.
Yeah, Zacian gets that Intrepid Sword boost as well from this here. The Incineroar actually going for a Throat Chop onto the opposing Incineroar, so kind of a tough target here, possibly thinking that a different Pokemon would switch in on that Incineroar side. The Trick Room does get up here, so if there was maybe that Throat Chop onto the Mimikyu on Wonseok's side, might have been able to do a nice amount of damage. Maybe not, not enough maybe to stop that Trick Room, but still a little bit more than possible.
Exactly, and of course the speed tiers have turned now. Actually taking any potential Electro Webs would have been really beneficial, but either way, we know that Zacian does like to be pretty speedy, so it does look to be a little bit more vulnerable for something like the Mimikyu here. Something like a Behemoth Blade is certainly going to hurt, but there is the potential here for some burns to be inflicted onto that opposing Zacian, so it definitely has to watch out, and Victor needs to be calculating these Trick Room turns and making sure that you're burning through them and just, stopping your opponent from being able to capitalize in this slower environment. Having your own Incineroar though, you can again keep applying sort of damage to the opposing side, but unfortunately it has taken a few Intimidate, so you need to be able to find a way to switch it in and then back in later on to throw down an Intimidate against Wonseok's Pokemon here. Of course, Zacian able to get in without having, with Incineroar already on the field for the opposing side means that Intrepid Sword will be intact for the moment.
Yeah, and a parting shot from Victor's Incineroar into Wonseok's Incineroar is going to allow it to switch out and maybe, get a little bit more fake out pressure to kind of stall out some Trick Room turns in the next few turns. Will allow him to bring in that Rillaboom, which we saw as that first Pokemon, probably not wanting to bring in the Regieleki. I mean, if he does, it will be nice to take a quick free sack on his side and a kind of like what Jamie says, those paid switch-ins, just to kill a turn here, especially because that Focus Sash is broken. Flare Blitz from the Incineroar, though, will go into the Regieleki because that Zacian protected, but it is not enough to knock out, so that parting shot definitely paying dividends here, while the Will-O-Wisp is not able to burn that Zacian, so another piece to be mindful of as well. Maybe you want to switch in your Incineroar into that Zacian slot moving forward so that you're not taking something like a burn here and getting some more fake-out pressure on the field.
Yeah, this is what I was worried about earlier when I referenced getting burned. The Will-O-Wisp on that opposing Mimikyu has now been revealed, and that's something that, like you said, the Zacian has to be careful of. Having the Pokemon like the Incineroar to switch into a potential Will-O-Wisp here, is something that Victor has utility for. Poor Regieleki, though, able to still survive, so it does allow Victor one more turn to burn through this opposing Trick Room. But the issue is you can burn through these turns all you want. If you don't start picking up KOs, then Wonseok's just going to be in a position to set up Trick Room again later on in the match, and you're just going to have taken a huge chunk of damage for your efforts. So it really comes down to whether the Zacian wants to stay in here, try and go for something like a Behemoth Blade. Will-O-Wisp has been known to miss a couple of times in the past, and even if it connects, getting some good damage onto that Mimikyu and removing Trick Room threat from later on in the game could be advantageous for the end game.
Yeah, Regieleki actually switches out for the Incineroar here too. So Incineroar getting another attack drop down onto the Incineroar on Wonseok's side after taking a parting shot as well. So nice to be able to kind of mitigate that damage, but a parting shot from Wonseok's Incineroar into the Zacian on Victor's side means it's not really going to worry too much about all of those drops as it switches back out to reset them and most importantly get a really nice attack drop onto the Zacian on the field and kind of remove that Intrepid Sword boost as well. So now Wonseok is able to send in one of his Pokemon for free. It is going to be that Kyogre, able to get the rain up, able to kind of capitalize on this Trick Room that he has been able to set for himself as well. So now he's going to be able to kind of deal with this a little bit better. A player from the Mimikyu into the Incineroar on Victor's side doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but Zacian's able to still get off a Behemoth Blade here because it wasn't attacked whatsoever into that Mimikyu slot. So that Mimikyu takes a ton of damage. It's still a one-hit knockout even after that parting shot. So really nice to get this Trick Room setter off of the field for Victor.
Yeah, absolutely amazing there. Honestly, just wasn't expecting the KO just to come out there. I was really expecting a Will-O-Wisp to be connecting down into that opposing Zacian, but the Intimidate's really paying off against that Mimikyu. The play rough doing really barely anything to the Incineroar as well, so it's still here relatively healthy. But the one thing that Victor still has to contend with is this opposing Kyogre that has now joined the field. You kind of mentioned in team preview that looking at the composition of Wonseok's team, this is probably going to be the slow and bulky, but still going to be heavy hitting Kyogre here. And in the Trick Room environment, there's not a lot of turns left. You need to be able to try and capitalize on this, and without any kind of fake out utility, you can go for something like a Water Spout and do a huge chunk of damage here.
Yeah, absolutely, but you still have Fake Out for one more turn, which is really nice here because this Incineroar did just switch in, so being able to Fake Out this Kyogre and allow yourself to maybe set up, we saw a peek behind the screen that this is that Swords Dance Zacian that we were able to see yesterday on stream too, which was really effective once it was able to set up, but the two dueling Fake Outs here, this is great because Victor's Fake Out was faster and then Wonseok's was slower, so this allows for that Kyogre to not move and allows for that Zacian to set up a Swords Dance, so you almost have to wonder if it would have been more beneficial for Wonseok to try and Fake Out the Zacian on Victor's side and just trade Fake Outs for a turn.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I really thought Wonseok's Incineroar would be the faster in Trick Room, but actually worked out really well for Victor here. Like you said, getting that Swords Dance up and just being able to stop the Kyogre in one more turn of Trick Room has definitely been fantastic. Zacian here, possibly safe to go for a Protect here and just burn out. I believe it's going to be the final turn of Trick Room. My maths is all over the place, correct me if I'm wrong. So that it can then be able to utilize the boost it's just got back and apply some more pressure once the speed tiers even out a little bit.
Yeah, Zacian does protect. I believe you're correct. My math's not perfect either, but I have been trying to count. Incineroar goes for the throat chop onto Wonseok's Incineroar. We have seen the speed tiers pretty much confirmed now as it has gone faster, and it prevents that parting shot most importantly. So the water spout now from the Kyogre, not able to connect on that Zacian. It will connect with the Incineroar. It is enough to knock it out because that Kyogre is at full health, but most importantly, this Zacian is still able to stand very comfortably because that Incineroar wasn't able to get that parting shot off, and now Trick Room's over without a Mimikyu to reset it. So Rillaboom could come in here pretty freely. Regieleki could come in here pretty freely. Rillaboom has opportunity for the fake out as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Who do you bring in? I mean, things look great here. You can go for something like the close combat into the opposing Incineroar, and then you've got an electric or a grass type Pokemon to bring in for this Kyogre. We all know personally I would have brought the Regieleki, but Rillaboom is going to be the choice for Victor. And I think you're right there, tapping on the fact that it's got the fake out utility as well. It does just give Victor a few more options, and it's certainly getting to the critical moments in this game as well. We're going to see who's going to be able to take out this game one.
Yeah, and if you are able to get this fake out up onto the Kyogre, unless this Kyogre is running Protect, which it very much could be. I haven't seen the leftovers proc on it. I do believe I saw the leftovers on that Mimikyu earlier, if I wasn't mistaken. So maybe a different item choice for both of these trainers here. I'm still seeing a slower Kyogre. We haven't seen it reveal Calm Mind, which could also mean that it's not running that. It could just be a weird Trick Room Kyogre with a little bit of extra bulk and some lower speed stats here. Again, Wonseok could be training his Pokemon in a very different way. South Korea has already moved on, so he does have the opportunity, too, to kind of try some new things out, which is always nice to see when you're still playing against a very serious team like this Zacian, and it's a really nice opportunity for him to maybe try out, get some testing in a little bit in these nice competitive best of threes. That Incineroar will actually switch out here, though. It's not going to want to take a close combat. Instead, that Zapdos will come in with very little damage, so this will be nice to just deal with that last bit of damage, allow that Incineroar to come in for free. That Grassy Glide's not enough to get the knockout, though, and it was not a fake out there, so this Kyogre is still going to be able to go for some damage, but the static here is absolutely huge because now Zacian may be paralyzed, will be moving slower than this Kyogre as well, unless this Regieleki can get something off like an Electrowebs, but an Origin Pulse is a great move because it's not HP dependent, and it hits both of these Pokemon, takes them down to well under half of their HP, but Kyogre could get knocked out to a Grassy Glide pretty comfortably next turn.
Yeah, that's the thing. Having the priority with the grassy terrain is in effect is really good here for Victor. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get the KO with the grassy glide. I like to think that Regieleki could have done it, but instead Rillaboom is the Pokemon on the battlefield, and it still has that advantage, having that priority with the terrain in play. But Zapdos, again, it's just the star of the stream at the minute. It comes in literally to be a Pokemon to be sacked. To allow Wonseok the opportunity to bring in a Pokemon after it's been KO'd, and it still manages to get the static activation and getting the paralysis onto that opposing Zacian, and that could indeed be critical. Just reducing its speed does give Wonseok the opportunity here, particularly if a paralysis is going to come into effect and it's going to be unable to move. The HP is dwindled on that Zacian, something like an Origin Pulse is going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. You could still switch in this Regieleki here as well, and possibly just take this fake out from the Incineroar on the opposing side, and maybe just try and deal with something like another Origin Pulse and hope for a miss here. And even if it doesn't miss, you still should have a pretty free switch in back to whichever Pokemon you're having in the back, which is going to be that Rillaboom. So Regieleki will switch in for the Rillaboom here. May possibly take the fake out, may possibly go take an Origin Pulse as well. Zacian protects, not getting stuck with paralysis there. Fake out goes into that Regieleki slot, so a really nice switch there. It is actually enough to knock it out as well, so not even going to have to worry about dealing with some Origin Pulse damages. That's just going to hit that protected Zacian, so no damage output from Wonseok there, and the rain stops here as well. So now Wonseok's kind of in this tough spot where his Origin Pulses aren't going to be doing as much without that rain. And but this Incineroar can do some more powerful fire type attacks now that the rain has stopped, especially if it tries to go into this Zacian on Victor's side of the field. But Rillaboom can come back in and get some nice fake outs off.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was a nice switch. Sad for Regieleki. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the best defenses, of course, so a fake out would have been enough to pick up a KO against it, sadly. We never really get to see that fake out getting a KO, but unfortunately for Regieleki's case, that was the situation here. But it does allow the Rillaboom to be preserved, to bring it back in, to apply that fake out and have that pressure on the field. But it just comes down to who do you target in this situation? Do you want to go down into that opposing Kyogre, or do you even just want to go for the Grassy Glide into it, try and pick up the KO? But then again, Zacian with the paralysis, you might want to try and support it, going for the fake out into the opposing Incineroar, maybe going for something like the Sacred Sword in to try and pick up the KO against it and hope that you survive an Origin Pulse, particularly as the rain has gone away. The Origin Pulse isn't going to be able to get the boost from it, and there's always the chance that it could miss as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And without that Origin Pulse having the best of accuracy, like Water Spout does, it can be tough to deal with. However, not going to be a problem because this Rillaboom is able to just take out this Kyogre right out of the gate. No fake outs here from it either. Zacian, faster than this Incineroar, goes for that Sacred Sword, but interesting berry choice here as well from this Incineroar, revealing that item for game two. So even with a critical hit, still a great amount of damage, but a Chople Berry Incineroar feels like a really interesting choice for a Pokemon I haven't seen before, but interesting to note later too, if I didn't see that play rough because of that Sacred Sword for that tech, so you do have to be mindful now. If you're going for a fighting type move into this Incineroar, it's not gonna be nearly as effective on that very first hit versus that second time. I feel like I'm hearing, I don't have chat open or anything, but I feel like I can hear Jamie Boyd screaming about Choppleberry Incineroar, even if Incineroar isn't one of his more favorite Pokemon. But a really nice match between these two players for game one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think we even talked in Team Preview about Incineroar kind of always having a berry, right? And we often see Citrus Berry or some of the chunkier berries like Figgy Berry, for example. But the Chople Berry, that's not one we discussed. And I think it's actually a really nice addition here. We know that Incineroar often has to take really heavy close combats, or in this case, Sacred Swords as well. And although you can calculate to sort of train your Incineroar to be able to survive a close combat, having the Chople Berry on there allows you to have room to train it in other stats instead. So possibly to boost up its speed a little bit more, or some of its other defenses as well. So going to be interesting to see how that information can possibly be utilized in game two.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Choppleberry is a really nice piece of knowledge to get. And then also knowing that that Kyogre isn't leftovers is really nice because if you bring your Rillaboom in, it may be getting that grassy terrain, health boost there, but it's not getting it ×2 from that leftovers, which is nice to know, especially if you're trying to take it out. Also, the knowledge right there of that Grassy Glide not being a one-hit knockout, showing how that Kyogre is trained, could be, a nice piece of knowledge to keep in the back of your mind as well. Regieleki, I think, was great in position in and out of Trick Room. So by in Trick Room, I mean it wasn't really in the game at all, which is kind of where Regieleki doesn't want to be. So I think Regieleki being able to come in and take that hit and just kind of allow for that fake out to get timed at the very end was really nice because it kind of did give Victor a good out there, especially, if his Zacian was paralyzed and it wasn't able to get up and any sort of big damaging moves. Thankfully, the paralysis only just slowed him down. There wasn't any full paralysis from those moves, and making it unable to perform any attacks or anything there. It could still be something you have to be mindful of. Static is such a frustrating ability because it never really goes when you want it to, and then it goes when you don't sometimes. So if you're for some reason if you're running a Zapdos and Moongiz, you might get paralyzed from static and not from sleep from a spore. So either way, we do have the Zapdos and the Incineroar lead here, but Dragapult comes to this game for Victor along with his own Incineroar.
I think I can literally feel your excitement through the screen right now that this Dragapult is here, and I want to know what it's going to get up to. We know that it's the Choice Band variant as well, and of course that's something we know and Wonseok doesn't know this situation, so it's a nice sort of cheeky bit of insight we've got. And again, you see the Intimidates go around, nothing new here, there's Incineroars on the field, but going for something like the Dragon Darts here, you'll be able to do a really decent chunk of damage to your opponent's opposing Pokemon. And particularly with the band as well, that could be so significant going forward. But I want to see where the fake out's going to land from Victor's side. Obviously, we know that if Wonseok wants to go for the fake out, it's going to have to be into that opposing Incineroar. Can't really fake out a Ghost. But then again, the Zapdos has the utility here to maybe go for some good damage with an electric type move. Try and just sort of chunk away at these opposing Pokemon.
Yeah, and Victor's Incineroar is faster still, so it does get that faster fake out onto Wonseok's Incineroar, but the Dragon Dart's here, a great move, able to target both of the Pokemon on Wonseok's side with each hit, brings him down almost to 50%. Volt Switch from the Zapdos, showing the utility that it has, able to switch in and out for Wonseok, maybe able to bring in a Pokemon that's going to like dealing with the Dragapult a whole lot better. Could be something like that Mimikyu with that Play Rough as well, if he did actually bring that to this game. It would be a nice way to get some nice, super effective damage off. If you have your Urshifu, you're not going to be able to go for something like a close combat, but you could still get some really nice Surging Strikes damage off, because no Pokemon really wants to take 3 attacks, even if it does take them pretty comfortably, especially if they're critical hits. So it gives him a little bit more utility to move around. He could also bring in that Kyogre. Kyogre's going to be able to at least start getting off some pretty strong water spouts right out of the gate, even if it, there is a couple of a Dragapult on the field, but instead it's going to be that Mimikyu. So Mimikyu's going to come in, going to put immediate pressure on with Trick Room, and also going to put on some pressure with that Play Rough.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mimikyu's a great Pokemon to switch in here because obviously the Dragapult's going to be locked into Dragon Darts. It's a Dragon type move, not going to affect the Fairy type Pokemon on the opposing side of the field. So even though kind of Dragapult, Dragon Dance isn't something you necessarily calculate in a format without Dynamax and Gigantamax, if you're possibly able to read that that is a choice band variant, bringing in this Pokemon is brilliant because your opponent's either going to be forced to go for the Dragon Darts again, meaning your Disguise is going to still be locked in. It's not going to have that chipped away, or Victor's going to be forced to switch at that Dragapult. It does give Wonseok the opportunity to go for that Trick Room. Dragapult, however, going to stay in and go for the Dragon Darts.
Yeah, Dragon Darts is going to do a really nice amount of damage to this Incineroar. Because of the way Dragon Darts works, it hits twice, and this Incineroar isn't holding something like a Citrus Berry, it's holding that Chople Berry, so it wasn't able to regain any health. The Play Rough, though, enough to knock out this Dragapult pretty comfortably. A critical hit on top of it, so Dragapult not able to be able to take care of this Mimikyu in any way, shape, or form, but it is out of the gate. Parting Shot, though, from the Incineroar will allow the Incineroar to switch out and maybe bring in something for Victor that can handle this Trick Room a little bit better than maybe what he had in that last game. If he has something that can take care of this Mimikyu with 2 hits, because that Mimikyu's priority would be last, something like a Grassy Glide and a Behemoth Blade able to knock it out could be really nice to prevent that Trick Room from going up, especially now that the Zapdos is off the field. That was causing so many problems, and it will have to switch back in just to kind of put that pressure back onto the field. But no more Fake Out and no more Intimidate, which is absolutely huge for Victor to know moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're right here. Having the Zacian and the Rillaboom out in the field, which I believe is the options that Victor is locked in here, does apply so much pressure to that Mimikyu. It actually looks like it came out pretty in that particular last turn, picking up a KO. He's got his Disguise still intact, but like you said, with that priority with the Grassy Glide, can be dealing a huge chunk of damage. And stopping that Trick Room from going up. Wonseok's brought out that Kyogre. Of course, Trick Room is going to be the sort of the speed environment that Kyogre wants, but considering we saw how much the Behemoth Blade did under an Intimidate, or I think it was through a Parting Shot, we know that Mimikyu's not going to be able to survive. And of course as well, when you've got the Kyogre here in a situation, you might predict that the Mimikyu's going to go for a Protect or a Detect or something like that. You can then freely go with your Rillaboom for a Grassy Glide down into that opposing Kyogre. It really is, which target do you want to choose? But I think you either commit to doubling in the Mimikyu, or you have to, just commit to kind of breaking the the Disguise on the opposing Mimikyu, and then going for some big damage on that Kyogre.
Yeah, and I think the important thing too for Victor to know is that his Grassy Glide wasn't enough to knock out this Kyogre in one hit. So this Kyogre would also need a double target. Mimikyu needs that double target just to deal with that Disguise. Kyogre would also need a double target from both the Zacian and from the Rillaboom to kind of take out this Kyogre, who can sit a little bit more comfortably by being so bulky, especially if it's running a little bit slower. But instead, Mimikyu's going to switch out here. So if something comes in, it could take a really rough double target. Is going to be the Zapdos, though, who's already just above 50 HP. The Grassy Glide, though, right into that Kyogre, a ton of damage, not able to knock it out, of course, but Zacian goes for that Sacred Sword, an awesome double target here, making sure that there was no Protect, is able to knock out that Kyogre. Trick Room does not go up, and this puts Victor in a great spot moving forward because he still has that Grassy Glide and he still has Behemoth Blade to be able to take out something like this Mimikyu, but there is still the threat of Hurricane if that Zapdos is carrying it. We saw Volt Switch and we saw Heat Wave, which is a little bit of a different move for Zapdos to be running.
Honestly, absolutely love that play from Victor, knowing that the Mimikyu was so vulnerable, it was either going to have to protect or switch, just going, hey, I can double target down into this Kyogre, and there is nothing that Wonseok can do about it. You know that you have the speed advantage here. It's a slow and bulky Kyogre, and like you mentioned, we already knew the Grassy Glide wasn't going to be enough, so the double target, I think, was a really nice play here, and it now just puts you into this position where Mimikyu is forced to come back in. If it's not running a protective move, then you're just going to be able to pick up the KO against it, and Zapdos, yes, although you do have to worry about the Hurricanes, typically, it only really has those single sort of target moves. A Heat Wave, sure, but the rain is up. It's not going to be dealing as much damage. So Zacian doesn't have to fear it quite as much. So you can possibly deal with that Zapdos a little bit later on. Or alternatively, you can remove it from play, and what's Mimikyu really going to do at this stage?
Yeah, Mimikyu really is going to be tough. It does, like we said, have option to Play Rough. Play Rough was great to knock out that Dragapult early on, but Play Rough's not going to do a whole lot to both of these Pokemon if they're able to take care of it first. So, especially if this Mimikyu is running slower, like we saw, of course, Trick Room is that minimal priority, so it's not going to be probably going for that. A Grassy Glide, though, comfortable to break this Disguise. It will be able to possibly regain this health if it does not get double targeted, thanks to the grassy terrain. but instead I believe this Behemoth Blade is also going right into that Mimikyu as well. So Mimikyu is not really going to be able to do anything except sit on the field and take some pretty rough damage after it was able to get that great knockout early in the game with that critical hit. But now it means that it's this Zapdos against 3 of the Pokemon on Victor's side. Hurricane is the move of choice here. It will hit into that Rillaboom, does a ton of damage, brings it down into the bottom 25% of its health. Doesn't look like it gets the confusion though, most importantly, so at least this Rillaboom will be able to go for something possibly moving forward. Could even be that U-turn just to switch in and out, but you know, even a Grassy Glide with priority is nice to just do a little bit of chip damage to allow that Zacian to kind of just take care of the rest of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you've got kind of the Pokemon advantage here, it's just all about getting the KO and cleaning out this set. So I think going for something like the Grassy Glide just to get the little bit of chip, although it's not going to be super effective, it could be enough just to help out the Behemoth Blade here. Grassy Glide is going to connect in, does do a significant chunk, and Behemoth Blade is going to be the follow-up move here.
Yeah, Behemoth Blade will pretty comfortably wrap up this game for Victor, even if it is not super effective. But an awesome game from Victor, really well done by being able to take care of that Kyogre and calling that switch and no protect, because getting rid of Kyogre before it's able to get off any moves, before it's able to go for something like a Water Spout or an Origin Pulse is absolutely great gameplay from him, because he had 2 options. He could double target either one of the Pokemon, and he could possibly get a knockout, right? So being able to be mindful that, hey, maybe this Mimikyu I want to protect, and they might double target this Mimikyu so I can switch it back in and get Trick Room up later and put myself in a better position. I'm willing to lose Zapdos here. But, you know, then there was that awesome read of being able to just say, you know, this Kyogre might be assuming that I'm going to protect, blah, blah, blah. All of that really nice stuff. So it was great to see that decision making. Nice to see he was able to be mindful, especially knowing that Grassy Glide wasn't enough to knock out, that you'd have to go for it with 2 moves. So no Sacred Swords that game, or sorry, no Swords Dance that game from that Zacian. So still showing how much of a threat Zacian is, even without that extra little bit of setup on its attack stat.
Yeah, it definitely didn't even need the Swords Dance at this point. Just the Behemoth Blades was safe to go through, particularly when, you know, you got rid of the Incineroar so well with the Dragon Darts. And I think, you know, you just have to credit the kind of the mechanic of that move. Even when the Mimikyu's on the field, that second little Dreepy isn't going to go to waste. It's just going to be able to target down into the Incineroar. And that was more than enough with the Choice Band to be able to pick up the KO against it. And that just meant Zacian's life was so much easier coming into this match. Doesn't have to worry about having its Intrepid Sword boost taken away from it. So it can go for these really powerful Behemoth Blades. And even when the Mimikyu came into the field, you know, there's always the threat of that Will-O-Wisp. But because Trick Room didn't get set up and constantly Victor was able to apply that pressure of being able to remove Mimikyu from the field, even with the disguise intact, he had the utility to remove it, then Zacian again was still sitting in a really safe place. So definitely a really good restrictor to have and really well piloted by Victor.
Yeah, this is one of those times again. I think I said this exact same thing last week where I'm wondering what the item on that Kyogre actually was there. So could have been something like a Walk-In Berry, which would have been really interesting, but I doubt it because Kyogre has so much utility and it can do so many things. So, you know, awesome play by both teams. This sadly is still the end for Brazil, even though Victor was able to cinch out that win though. South Korea, absolutely dominant team throughout the whole World Cup. They will be moving on into this top 8. So a really nice play from both players, able to show still Brazil, even though they didn't win, they're not a team to be messed with. There are so many talented players from the Latin America region as a whole, but Brazil especially. Not any of those players that I would personally want to face myself and feel confident in any sort of matchup, no matter how good my Pokemon were for the game. So I think we'll be taking a short break here. We'll be coming back with a third match of the day, and I believe this third match is going to be one of the most exciting of the day, because if I'm not mistaken, results just got updated. It's 3-3 between the teams. So we'll be taking a quick break. We'll be right back.